There is a hidden wound in the one who is always there, the person everyone counts on, who answers quickly, who never disappears, is rarely truly seen. Constant availability becomes a tranquil form of self-erasure. You exist everywhere, but belong nowhere. The need to always be reachable is not virtue. It is a quiet panic disguised as generosity. It grows from an old emptiness, the fear of being abandoned, forgotten, or irrelevant. Somewhere in the past, presence became proof of worth, and silence began to feel like death. Inside, two selves coexist. The helpful, reliable one who smiles, anticipates, adjusts, and the hidden one, the resentful, exhausted self that never appears in public. The split widens over time until you start living like an assistant to your own life. Jung called this division the caregiver persona, the mask that earns safety through service. Beneath it lives the shadow that holds rage, envy, and the desperate need for rest that never receives permission. The more you suppress that shadow, the louder it vibrates beneath your calm surface. Neuropsychology adds another layer. Chronic readiness keeps cortisol elevated, wiring your body for emergency even in silence. Every time someone praises you, "You're such a lifesaver. You're always there," the brain releases a small dose of dopamine, just enough to keep the cycle alive. It's the biochemical economy of self-neglect, stress maintained by tiny rewards. But when you finally stop always being there, the first transformation is internal. It is not the world that changes first. It is your relationship with your own time, energy, and worth. Your nervous system, long enslaved by responsiveness, begins to reorganize. And as you reclaim rhythm, everything around you starts to respond differently, not to your presence, but to your absence. Constant availability often looks like love, but beneath it lies strategy. The behavioral maneuver of someone terrified of rejection or conflict. It is less kindness than survival. The friend who answers every message instantly, who rearranges plans for everyone, who stays late to help and never asks for reciprocity. Beneath that devotion lies the quiet ache of disposability. The partner who never says no, who absorbs every demand until suddenly exploding in resentment. These are not examples of virtue. They are the symptoms of emotional self-erasure. The psychology is precise. There is cognitive dissonance between "I'm independent and strong" and "I cannot tolerate the thought of disappointing anyone." The mind resolves this tension by rewriting the story. "I just care too much." In truth, it is fear, dressed as generosity. Then comes the Pygmalion effect in self-perception. You sculpt yourself into the identity you think others need. I'm the one who fixes things. I'm the calm one. I'm the stable one. Each act of compliance reinforces the myth until the mask becomes muscle memory. Attachment theory gives it language. Anxious attachment turns presence into currency. If I am always available, they will never leave. The fear of absence makes you perform reliability as insurance against abandonment. It feels noble, but it's transactional. Availability traded for assurance. Nietzsche might call this the will to power inverted, the instinct to shape life redirected inward, transformed into usefulness instead of creation. You stop expressing power and start offering service, living not as a force but as a tool, valuable only when needed. To diagnose this pattern, watch where you fear reducing your availability. The relationships where withdrawal feels impossible are the ones built not on choice but on dependency. The test is simple. If absence feels like danger, presence has become captivity. And yet, awareness is liberation. Seeing this mechanism clearly is the first rebellion. You realize that constant presence is not love. It is a quiet negotiation with fear. And fear, once observed, begins to lose its authority. The moment you withdraw, the world reorganizes. You stop answering immediately, stop appearing on command, stop being the one who fills every gap, and suddenly, people begin to see you, not just use you. Absence is not disappearance, it is definition. Once you stop being perpetually accessible, perception changes. Those who relied on your constant availability must now confront the true weight of your presence. Scarcity reframes value. What was once taken for granted becomes visible through contrast. Respect often begins where excess ends. You see it everywhere. The employee who no longer answers late-night messages doesn't lose credibility. They gain it. Boundaries reveal where authority begins. The family member who stops resolving every crisis forces the system to self-correct. Others begin to organize, or they reveal their entitlement openly. Either way, truth surfaces. This is not punishment, it's calibration. You are teaching the environment the price of your energy. What is given endlessly becomes invisible. What is given deliberately acquires gravity. Social psychology calls this hedonic adaptation. The law that what is always available fades into the background. Distance restores contrast. The mind learns to notice again what it once consumed without thought. The same principle governs relationships. Closeness without rhythm dulls appreciation. Temporary distance reawakens perception. There is also the halo disruption effect. When your always there role dissolves, people can no longer reduce you to a single function. You cease being the caretaker, the listener, the fixer, and are forced into focus as a full person. The mythology breaks, and genuine interaction begins. Strategically, both Sun Tzu and Machiavelli understood this principle centuries apart. Sun Tzu wrote that victory belongs to the one who knows when to engage and when to wait. Selective engagement is tactical advantage. You stop fighting every battle and reserve strength for the ones that matter. Machiavelli warned that overfamiliarity dissolves authority. Too much presence breeds contempt. Controlled distance sustains respect because mystery invites consideration. On a biological level, reducing constant interaction changes the chemistry of attachment. Continuous contact floods the system with oxytocin, the hormone of bonding, blurring boundaries until individuality fades. Step back, and oxytocin levels stabilize. Emotional fusion loosens. You begin to discern who still reaches out when your presence is no longer guaranteed. Absence, then, is not cruelty. It is diagnostic. It reveals who values you, who uses you, and who simply fears your silence. Every withdrawal becomes a mirror. And within that mirror, you rediscover proportion. How much of you belongs to you, and how much was merely borrowed by the demands of others. When you stop overextending, relationships shift from consumption to recognition. People who truly see you adjust. Those who depended on your compliance retreat. Either outcome is alignment. And alignment, though lonely at first, is the soil of authority. The paradox is simple. By reducing your presence, you amplify your impact. When you stop rushing to prove relevance, the world starts to measure your absence. And in that measurement, respect quietly rewrites itself. When you finally step back, the first voice that rises against you is not theirs. It is your own. It whispers guilt. You're being selfish. They'll think you've changed. They'll leave. This is not conscience. It is conditioning. Your nervous system has been trained to interpret stillness as betrayal. Withdrawal feels like loss because your identity was built around presence. Without the usual rush of doing, your mind scrambles to find meaning. The silence between responses begins to feel dangerous, as though absence itself were a crime. Every ping ignored, every message left unanswered, sends a small electric shock of anxiety. They'll forget you. You'll lose them. But this panic is not proof of love. It's proof of dependency. You are detoxing from the chemical and emotional feedback loop of being needed. Psychologically, this is learned helplessness reversed. You have learned to equate love with self-denial. And now that you assert choice, your system interprets freedom as failure. You feel wrong for having boundaries because history taught you that safety was purchased through exhaustion. Confirmation bias keeps the illusion alive. Every small sign of distance, a delayed reply, a neutral tone, becomes evidence that your limits were mistakes. So you rush back into availability, soothing guilt at the expense of self-respect. The cycle continues until you recognize the voice of fear for what it is. Residue, not reality. In Jungian terms, this reaction marks the surfacing of shadow. The part of you that longs for sovereignty, solitude, silence, rest, has been buried under the identity of the caregiver. When it finally emerges, you mistake it for coldness or cruelty. You call it selfish, but it is simply the part of you that remembers how to breathe. Look at the common scene. Someone finally says, "I can't right now," then instantly follows it with apologies or extra favors. They can't yet stand in the stillness of their own boundary. Their biology fights back. Dopamine drops because there's less external validation. Cortisol spikes from the fear of loss. But repetition rewires. Over time, the brain begins to associate boundaries with safety instead of danger. The chemistry of people-pleasing dissolves into neutrality. The practical shift is subtle. Stop asking, "Are they angry at me?" and begin asking, "Why does my system interpret my limits as an attack?" The first question keeps you dependent. The second makes you conscious. And consciousness, as always, is liberation disguised as discomfort. Freedom is not withdrawal. It is precision. Selective presence means showing up with intention, not reflex. You no longer exist everywhere. You exist exactly where your energy holds meaning. The Stoics mapped this architecture centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus both insisted, you control your attention, your time, your consent, never others' expectations or reactions. Every act of presence becomes an ethical decision. You no longer attend to what screams loudest, but to what aligns deepest. Selective presence is the art of choosing what deserves your nervous system. It's not about being unreachable. It's about being unprogrammable. You treat presence as currency, not confetti. Neuroplasticity supports this transformation. Every time you delay a reaction or choose solitude, the prefrontal cortex strengthens, the part of the brain responsible for judgment and inhibition. The limbic system, source of urgency and emotional compulsion, quiets. What once felt impossible becomes baseline calm. Over time, your system learns that silence is not threat, but stability. Anxiety levels drop. The mind no longer seeks approval to confirm existence. Autonomy becomes the new normal. Practical structures help anchor this evolution. create deliberate delays before responding to any non-emergency demand. Even if you know your answer, say, "I'll think about it." The pause itself reclaims territory from compulsion. Reserve full availability for relationships built on reciprocity, not dependence. And once a week, observe where your presence is assumed rather than requested. Those are the places silently draining your authority. Then remember this metaphor. A lighthouse does not chase ships. It stands in one place, shining steadily. Those who navigate adjust to its presence, not the other way around. You do not prove your light by constant motion. You prove it by constancy. This is selective presence, the posture of one who knows their axis. You are no longer orbiting others' needs. They orbit your consistency. The moment you stop always being there, you stop existing as a resource and begin existing as a center. Life reorganizes around that stillness. When you stop always being there, you do not lose love. You clarify it. What remains is reciprocity, stripped of illusion. Some people will leave. Others will rise to meet the new rhythm. Both are forms of truth. Boundaries will still shake your nerves at first. Guilt will whisper. Old reflexes will tug. But remember, peace is not comfort. It is clarity. To stand still while others adjust is not arrogance. It is maturity. This is how respect begins. Not in grand gestures, but in quiet calibration. You move from reaction to regulation, from noise to intention, from being everywhere to being exact. And then a final silence. The kind that needs no announcement, no justification. The silence of someone who has finally reclaimed time, attention, and selfhood. You do not vanish, you refine. You do not harden, you align. And in that stillness, everything changes. I choose lucidity.